My story takes place on Halloween night. I was walking around by myself. Now I'm 15 years old, and my mother just did not care. Most nights she spent blacked out drunk on the couch. It was my job to kind of fend for myself. I already have a job, buy my own groceries, and basically do everything else for myself. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. It was about 8 p.m. on Halloween night. I was in a hoodie with my hood up, skinny jeans, and some beat up Converses I used to run around in. I had my bag full of essentials on me. Me and my friends planned to meet up and just do stuff. Smoking, graffiti, and trashing abandoned places was kind of our thing. None of us had very good homes, and I was adopted. All of our parents were just not good people, to say the least. This was kind of our way of just getting our frustrations out. And hey, at least we weren't hurting anybody. I was walking down the street, passing a few trick-or-treaters from time to time. There was an abandoned warehouse about 1.5 miles from our neighborhood. To give you perspective, my neighborhood is in a small town in Nebraska, kind of isolated from people. We live in a rundown part of town. There's not many kids around here either. Mostly just druggies, depressed adults in debt, and people who just don't care. This town is kind of the last leg of society. A few times I would see a house with a light on, go up, put my mask on, and get some candy. I figured we could use a snack that we did not have to pay for. After about a 30-minute walk through the rundown houses, buildings, and streets, I finally found the warehouse. I saw a rusted chain in the dirt, and the door wide open. The old lights were on as well. I also heard laughter coming from inside, so I figured that my friends were in there. I walked in, and the laughter and the conversation became louder. I yelled out, "I can hear you guys from outside. Shut up," and the voices stopped. The warehouse became eerily quiet. I stopped in my tracks to listen, but it was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. I slowly walked into the room where I heard the voices and was grabbed from behind, a black glove covering my mouth. I was lifted into the air. I broke free and fell to the ground, and laughter erupted from behind me. I looked back to see Jake and Dalton, my two friends. "You guys are dicks," I screamed at them as I searched for something to throw at Dalton, the one who had picked me up. "Come on, bro. You know we had to mess with you," Dalton said in the middle of laughter. Jake held me up, but almost dropped me because he laughed when I glared at him. I'm the shortest in the group, only 5'7", while Jake is 5'11", and Dalton is about 6'2" or 6'3". I dusted myself off, and Jake handed me a cigarette. I took it, pulled out my Zippo lighter, and lit it. Dalton was already smoking, and Jake was rummaging around in his bag. We all brought bags with a few surprises for each other. I brought all the candy and some spray paint. Jake got up from his bag with more spray paint and a few beers. "That's weak," Dalton said as he chuckled. Jake cracked open a beer and said, "Oh yeah, what did you bring?" Dalton looked at him with a big smirk and pulled out a bong from his bag. We all smiled at each other. We gathered our stuff and went to find a place in the warehouse to sit down for a bit before we started spray painting. There was a large steel rafter that had rusted and fallen down from the ceiling. We all gathered around it and sat down. Jake managed to find a table to drag over so we could set all our stuff on top. Dalton started packing the bong while me and Jake were talking. We checked the time, and it was already 9:30 p.m. Most of the trick-or-treaters would have gone home by now, especially in this area. Jake started telling me about this mysterious death he saw on the news. "Did you hear about the death in our area?" he asked me. "Someone dies around here every week. What's so special about this one?" I said. "Nah, this is not a suicide or drug overdose this time. Someone was murdered," he continued. "Their intestines were ripped off and taken. The rest of their innards were spread out on the floor. It was apparently so horrific that police officers kept throwing up, not only to the gruesomeness, but the smell. The body was days old." "That's disgusting," Dalton exclaimed. "I'm literally eating right now. Can you not?" And I started laughing, and Jake kept going. "I'm being serious. Who do you know around here that would do something like that?" Dalton glared at him and said, "Me, if you don't shut up and come smoke this." He smirked, and I was laughing so hard that I rolled over and fell into the dirt. Jake and Dalton started laughing at me when we heard a bang come from the second floor, like something heavy fell to the floor. "Hey Jake, "There's your murderer right now," he said sarcastically. I got up from the dirt and said, "What even was that?" Still recovering from almost peeing myself from laughter. "You know we have to go check it out," Jake said. "Can we at least smoke first? If someone is up there, I at least want to die baked," Dalton said, groaning. We gathered around the table and took a few hits of the bong, and then went to go find the stairs. The warehouse was pretty big, but not massive. It took about 7 minutes to just walk from one side of the building to the other. After about 10 minutes of searching, we finally found the stairs. Jake went first, I went second, and Dalton, being the most high, went third. Me and Jake were high, but not completely baked, like Dalton. You could hear how loud he was being walking up the metal stairs. We reached the top and crossed the catwalk to get to the offices. There were about 6 offices, and once we crossed the catwalk, we started hearing noises, like some kind of loud chewing noise. We all looked at each other, and Dalton said, "What the hell is that? Way too loud." The chewing noises stopped immediately, and we looked at Dalton annoyed, but quickly, our anger became fear. A wave of shivers washed over our bodies. We heard a scratch and quiet shuffling coming from down the hallway of offices. We slowly began to creep down the hallway, Jake still leading the way. We checked each office as it became quieter and quieter the further we walked. I was shaking for my life. I lifted up my jacket to pull out my hunting knife that I kept on me. Dalton stopped to look at me. Worry filled his eyes. We pushed onward to the last office on the right. Jake slowly peered into the office and glanced around. There was a wall blocking the other part of the office. He looked back at us in confusion. We stared at him, fear still shooting out of our eyes. As soon as we saw it, we could do nothing about it. A long, slim, bony hand with the longest fingers that I've ever seen grabbed Jake's shirt and yanked him into the office. He screamed like he was being murdered, and we rushed in there behind him. We saw his leg being dragged around the corner, and when we followed, we were truly horrified. Blood splattered the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. Body parts and innards were strewn about like toys in a child's room. But the most disturbing of all was the creature holding Jake. The creature walked on 4 spider-like legs. The body was slim and bony. The arms were long enough to touch the floor while it was fully standing up, but the creature was so tall and long that it could not fit into the office building standing up. The creature's head was a rounded, rectangular shape. Its mouth covers most of its head. It had hinged jaws and razor-sharp teeth. A dark green, almost black substance dripped from its mouth. Its eyes were completely black and sunken. It had tiny hairs on its head, but nowhere else. Its head resembled the face of a human, but its body the opposite. This creature was not from this world. It looked up at us. It jammed its sharp, bony fingers into Jake's sternum and ripped out his intestines. It looked back at us and let out a soul-shattering scream. I dropped my knife and ran for the broken window in the slanted roof. Dalton just stood there, still frozen in terror. He did not stand a chance. I looked back, and the creature dropped Jake's lifeless body and then ran to Dalton. Its spider-like legs made it move much faster than a human. It snatched Dalton up and bit its fangs into his neck, taking out a huge chunk of his neck where all the arteries passed through. He was dead before his body hit the floor. I jumped out of the window and onto the roof part. I glanced back, and the creature had already made it to the window. I knew I had to jump. I clenched my fists as I flew through the air and down onto the hard dirt and concrete. I rolled and felt pain shoot through my entire body. I glanced up, and the creature was nowhere to be seen. I got up and sprinted down the road and did not stop until I finally made it back to my house. My mother was sitting there waiting for me. "Why are you here?" she said. "Mom, what are you talking about? I live here," I retorted. She lowered her voice to a more sinister tone. "You weren't supposed to survive that." I slowly started to back away and sprinted out the front door. There was a group of people waiting for me. They were all dressed in hazmat suits. A few of them were holding rifles. I stopped dead in my tracks and stared at them in fear. "What is going on?" I said. They all said in unison, "You weren't supposed to survive that." The closest voice came from behind me. It was my mother. She was holding a black bag. "What are you doing?" I said. No. You weren't supposed to survive that."